different members tonight will be asking questions from specific criteria. So that's the way the process is going to work. There are a number of areas that the board wants to explore with the candidates. So, Dr. Austin, I asked you to be concise as possible with your remarks so we can move through the process.
Okay.
That being said, I have some general questions I'd like to ask you first.
Okay.
We read your resume, so we know something about you. Is there something that you would like to tell us and share with us that's on your resume?
Well, my wife and I moved to Franklin County 7 years ago. Dr. Amy Lomas was the director of schools, and she hired me to take over Franklin County High School. When we moved here, the community welcomed us. They offered us support. We have made friends here. We have learned to love this community. We are vested here. We own a home. My wife has had different positions in the community. She was an ambassador with the Chamber of Commerce. She was on the board to the Animal Harbor, various things like that. She's also very involved in public service. And so we feel like we have been welcomed and we love the community and we want to continue to serve the community. And I feel like as a director of schools, I have a lot to offer.
The second question is, what will you do to create an atmosphere in the schools that will lead to educational benefits for all students?
That's a great question. That may be one of the most important questions of the night. For one thing, I plan on doing a very in-depth research of different aspects of our school district. As soon as I take the job, to take the position, I actually have a transition plan that I would like to present to the board so you can see what my plan is for the first 100 days. I think it's important that I do the research and I know exactly where we stand in various things, various agencies, whether they're successful, whether they are doing what we need to do, whether we need to make some changes, looking at the academic atmosphere, and really basically, listening and learning, having meetings, talking to people. I think, the first 100 days of the job, I'm going to be doing a lot of just listening to people and hearing from the stakeholders. I want to know what their thoughts are, what their concerns are, what they would like for our district to be doing differently and better. There are some things that we can do differently better.
And the final general question is, what do you consider to be the major strengths that you would bring to this position? Thanks for reading.
The strengths that I bring to the position, well, this is my 32nd year in education. I know you're thinking I started when I was 10 years old. I have a lot of different leadership experiences, both in education and in the military. I served 27 years in the military, 7 of it on active duty, and 20 years in the National Guard. I also served a year in Fallujah, Iraq, in a combat zone as a leader. So I have a variety of different leadership skills. I also think, one of my core values is that I'm a good listener. And I also have the ability to team build. And I want to hear from people, and I want to be able to solve problems, as in a collaborative manner. I'm definitely not the smartest person in the room, and I definitely am not going to be the person who can solve all the problems. And it'll definitely have to be a team effort. I also think that I'm a visionary. I look down in the future, and I see things that we want to set our sights forward and make improvements and get to those different places that we need to get to. I think the Franklin County School District is great. And we have a lot of opportunities. We've got some problems. We've got some things that we have to work on. There are a lot of opportunities because I think there's a lot of support from our stakeholders in this community.
With that, I'll move on into first criteria.
Okay.
This criteria deals with having exceptional listening skills.
Okay.
And the question is, give us an example of when you've changed your mind and taken a different course of action as a result of listening to others.
I'm not one to immediately make a decision about something. I'm real careful about, jumping on things. I I do like to listen and process. Obviously, if the time allows, being a building principal, many times, you have to make on-the-spot decisions, and sometimes you look back on it and think, I may not have made the right decision, or I should have given that some more thought. I don't know that I can really come up with a specific example. It seems like, it's just a process, you think through things and process things in your head, and, I do that a lot. I talk to other people about it, I run things by people, and I think that's really important. I think, I'm certainly not afraid of somebody telling me, look, you need to rethink this, or you might want to, you might think about it from this perspective, or you might not have thought of it this way, or you might want to consider these other issues. But I am definitely not afraid to admit that I may have done something wrong, made a wrong decision, and go back and correct that.
The second criterion deals with having the wisdom to know when change is necessary and the ability and determination to generate that change. And the question is, describe a significant change you initiated in your district or school, and tell us what evidence you have to show that it's a positive change. How did you build support for that change, even in the face of opposition?
So, as I mentioned earlier, when I took over Franklin County High School, there were a lot of problems. I think there was a problem with climbing in the building. They were not seeing growth on TVOS. And Dr. Lomas and I spent a lot of time talking about, instilling that academic focus as the building level principal. Being an outsider, being somebody from Missouri, and not really knowing the community that well, not knowing the faculty and staff that well, I kind of had to ease into that. But there was one thing for sure, we had to make some changes. Things had to be different. When we first moved here before school ever started, my wife and I would go out to eat. When they learned that I was a new high school principal, we heard the stories. We heard the concerns from the people in the community. And so, fairly soon after we started school, I remember one of the first faculty meetings, I kind of laid it out for my teachers. Some things that I told them that they were in charge, they would be supported, we needed to be focusing on academics, we need to make sure that we have the resources that are necessary. If there are any roadblocks, anything that are things that are in your way that I can help you remove, to communicate with me. Make sure they understood that there's an door policy. You're welcome to talk to me about anything and everything, what your concerns were. And I realized fairly soon that we had some problems with some of our teaching staff. And we needed to come up with some plans to bring those teachers up to the standard that I expected. And so in some cases I was able to do that, and others not so much. So, I guess to answer your question, I think coming into Franklin County High School my first year was a big challenge.
And my last criterion deals with seeking and inviting effectively.
I'm sorry?
Seeking and inviting effectively.
Okay.
Successes as well as the needs of the school system. And my question is, what have you done to help the public understand the needs of your school system?
Sure. I think another one of my core values is effective communication. I need to be clear in what I am communicating to my staff, my faculty, my students, and my parents. We do that in a variety of ways. We send out emails to parents with every day to get a I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought there. They get something from us every day, basically a calendar, information about what's going on in their school. We send out the school messenger calls. We do a lot of those. Just so that the parents know what's going on. Other things that I've done in the past, I've had some public forums in my school that I've partnered with the Franklin County Sheriff's Office or the Coalition, Drug Coalition, just to get information to the parents about substance abuse, vaping, human trafficking, those some of the topics. We also had a meeting about how parents and students can apply for colleges and how they can get financial aid. So those are the things that I've make my community aware of things that are going on in the school.
Ms. Jones?
Criteria is concerned with support, confidence, and pride within the community for the school system through timely information sharing and providing meaningful opportunities to be involved. My first question is, can you cite an instance in your current position that demonstrates your ability to build confidence in the schools?
Sure. Well, a great example is what's going on at Franklin County High School tonight. We have a parent meeting for our incoming 8th grade students. And, one of the things that we want to accomplish in that meeting is, sharing information with the parents and making them feel welcome and making them feel like it's okay for them to send their kids to Franklin High School. It's safe, and we're going to take care of them. We have lots of opportunities for those kids. Now, we've done that every year I've been. We will also do an orientation at the beginning of the school year for those parents or parents of new students coming into the district. We have give the parents and students an opportunity to tour the building, walk around, meet some of the teachers. Some of our clubs and our sports teams will have tables set up so they can meet with the students.
I think we should apologize for the conflict of having
That's
this
okay.
tonight and you not being at the high school.
That's okay.
My next question is, we expect our director of schools to be active and visible in our community. How would you go about accomplishing this in Franklin County?
Doing the same thing that I do now as a high school principal. I would say I'm at 80, maybe 85% of all the student functions. At the ball game, I actually like athletics, so it's not hard for me to go to ball games. My mother-in-law loves going to ball games. So, I take her to a lot of basketball games. We go to all the football games, baseball, softball. I was very, very happy that we were able to go to a home track meet last year. That was so great that we have such a great facility for people to come in. Very proud of that. We also enjoy going to band and choir. School has a great play every year. We've got one coming up in a couple of months. It's going to be really good. Footloose is the name of that play. We also, I'm out in the community a lot. We go out to dinner. We go to different functions. We attend church here. I think that I'm very visible, not just where students are present, but any other thing that I could possibly attend that I think will help give me some visibility for our parents, and we try to attend that.
Ms. Schultz?
I have criterion 5, and it has sound knowledge of instruction, curriculum, and educational programs that best meet the needs of a diverse student body. My first question is, what steps would you take to ensure academic success is coming?
That's a great question. I think I've already identified some areas that we need to work on. There are some schools that have been identified as targeted support improvement, and we need to get those schools off the list. I also looked through our test scores, and we have 2 subgroups that show up consistently as underperforming. One of the subgroups is our economically disadvantaged students. And that's something that I've looked at Franklin High School ever since I've been here. We get our scores back. I look at the data. I look at areas that we really struggle in. That's an area that we consistently struggle with. These are kids that, they're in poverty culture. And that doesn't mean that they have a low IQ. It means that we have to take a look at strategies. And they probably are going to require different instruction strategies just because of that poverty culture. The other, and I think that we can address that. I think that's something that we can tackle. We can make those improvements. And the other area that is pretty much universal in the county is student disabilities. And that's a tough one. but I think there are things we can do to make those improvements as well. Different pockets in the county, we have, struggle with underperforming African American students in different areas, at different grade levels. They struggle. It's not as much of a problem, frankly, in high school, but it is in some of the elementary schools. And our English language learners, they tend to struggle, but we are making some progress. They actually are improving better. I think we have a good plan in place for how we're going to address that. With that being said, I think the first step I'm going to take is I'm going to go to those schools and I'm going to have conversations. I'm going to open that up, and I hope that I can build some trust with our teachers, and that they know that I'm not there to, I'm not after a job, I'm not trying to fire anybody. I'm not going to go into those schools and try to, bully anybody or say, look, you need to teach harder, you need to work harder, because that's not my style, and it's very ineffective. And so I think having conversations with the teachers first thing, and then building leadership is also, a conversation that I'll have. Probably we'll have those separate first, and then bring them together to meet with them, as a group, and discuss, what's going on. Why are we struggling academically? What are some things that we need to be doing differently? What are the roadblocks that I can help you remove? How can I shield you from some of the things that are going on outside the classroom? I think that's very important. And really, are we properly giving the teachers the resources they need to do their job? Really important. Do they have the curriculum material? Do they have the professional development? Do they have the time to attend professional development? Are we using our PLC time? Are they staying in the classroom and just grading papers and entering grades? Hopefully not, because that's supposed to be a collaboration. So those are some things I want to ask questions about and talk to the faculty about. I think this is part of the question. I think that one of the things that our school district has done is they've contracted with NIET, National Institute for Excellence in Teaching. I've been to the training, some of the training, and I think it's really been effective. We've already seen some good results in our English language arts scores, especially at Frank County High School. I think our scores are some of the most improved in the county. I think the walkthroughs and the feedback that we've received from those walkthroughs is very effective. I think we expect that we'll see growth in English language arts, and we're going to be starting that with our math curriculum. We're adopting a new curriculum this year. We also implemented the instructional practice guide, IPG, from the state. And I've been to some training for that, and I'm very impressed with that. We are able to use that in concert with our Project Coach teacher evaluation system, so that's been really good. I really think that between the NIET and the IPG, I really expect to see some growth. But I am going to have monthly data meetings with every building principal. A couple reasons why I would do that. One is, I want to know the progress we're making. I want to know if we're not making progress, what action steps are we taking to improve student achievement. The other reason I want to do that is I want to make sure those building principals know what's going on in the building, and they're looking at it. We will look at the common formative assessment for student achievement, but also need to look at attendance, because attendance is directly related to student achievement. Instruction. I'm all over the place with it. But I think, with the new initiative with the NIET and the IPGs, I think, we're going to see the growth. We need to monitor that, and we need to make changes as necessary.
My second question is, describe your experience in developing, implementing, and/or evaluating an instructional program that has improved the educational achievement of your students.
I think we have implemented a lot of additional AP classes at Franklin County High School. When I first came here, we did not have a weighted grade scale, and lot of kids that had a 4.0. And so I kept hearing discussions, and kids were saying, I don't really want to take this hard class because I got a 4.0, and, so I was thinking, there's no incentive really for kids, because I think they recognized pretty early that they're not going to be the valedictorian, salutatorian, so if that's not what they're after, there really wasn't an incentive to take the honors classes or the AP classes. So I think changing, adding the weighted grade scale has made a difference. Our AP numbers are way, way up. We have in-person AP classes at the high school, and we also have started a program last year called AP Access for All, and it's an online class, and I think Casey can tell you they're rigorous. It's hard, and so they have the opportunity to get the AP grade, which affects their GPA, and they can take the challenge test, and if they score 3, 4, or 5, they can get the college credit as well. So I'm very proud of the fact that we were able to change the grade scale and add the weighted grades, and how that has, as I expected, it has resulted in more students taking those challenging classes.
Ms. Roberts?
My question will be dealing with criterion set 6, has a track record of building and maintaining a diverse, well-supported staff with high morale. Describe a situation related to your current job that demonstrates your ability to inspire and motivate people.
Wow. That's a hard one. Inspire and motivate. I don't look at myself as someone who inspires and motivates. I can tell you though, I don't know that I can give you an example in my current position, but I have been in schools and I have had people that have decided to start a doctorate program because they appreciated my leadership. They appreciated what I was able to do in my position, and they really wanted to. The reason I got my doctorate degree is because I wanted to be at the top of my game. I wanted to learn, and I wanted to know everything possible about being a school leader. And I think I was able to convey that. And I've had a couple of people that that follow the lead. And I think I've inspired some people at Franklin County High School to go into administration because I think they see there's some value in being in that office and how we can affect change quickly, and we can support teachers and support students.
Thank you. Can you cite an example of what you have done to build and maintain high morale among staff?
Well, we've done more than we have. When I first started, we did more than what we do now. We used to have a faculty and staff Christmas party. We used to have tailgate party. I still buy donuts for the faculty and staff. Occasionally, we serve breakfast. I have very short faculty meetings. They tend to really appreciate that. I give them extra gene days. They like that. It's funny, teachers, they are pleased by the smallest things. But I also, am very visible, and I talk to teachers in the hallways a lot. I enjoy teachers. I enjoy walking into a classroom and watching good teaching. Sometimes when I'm having a bad day, I know this is going to sound corny. Sometimes when I'm having a bad day, I like to walk into a classroom that I know I'm going to see some really good teaching.
Ms. Marhevsky?
I have criterion 7, which reads, show a commitment to working with students, parents, staff, the community, and the school board in developing long-range goals and strategies for the school system and the determination and ability to accomplish those goals. Focuses on students' critical thinking, well-being, and learning. Sorry. Do I need to redo that? No, we'll move on. Okay, so I get 2 questions also.
Okay.
Here's Sarah. It's okay.
Here's my first question. So, first, describe your involvement in the development of your school district or your school's strategic plan? Sort of more specifically, how do you work with students, parents, staff, teachers, community, and the school board to develop and implement your plan, sort of in general and as relates to special ed and social and emotional learning?
Okay,
So in general, I'll repeat it.
okay.
How do you work with students, parents, staff, teachers, community, school board to develop and implement your plan in general and for special ed and social and emotional learning?
Okay. So, our plans have to feed off of or be, connected with the district plans. And so, every year we're required to do the E-plan. We sit down and we talk about, things that we can do better. We have a committee, of teachers and parents and administrators that work with us on that plan. I probably don't do a very good job of communicating that after the plan is completed. Although at the beginning of the school year, we do talk about goals and we talk about, things we want to accomplish during that school year. And I want to jump over to the social emotional learning. That's something that's kind of a new thing in education, and I think it's very important. Kids are different now, and we have to. We can't assume that they know how to handle conflict, that they know how to process their emotions and how to process their anger, especially middle school and high school kids. They have a lot of things, emotional things going on in their lives, and they don't know really how to handle those things, how to make good decisions, how to maintain relationships. So I think that's something that's fairly new, and we need to do a better job, I think, of getting that information to our teachers so they can identify those situations and know how to handle those things when they come up in their class. Our assistant principals, they this is something that they are involved with all the time, and so I think it's important that they know that this is an area that we can't assume kids know how to handle that. We can't can't be reactionary when we're dealing with kids because, again, kids are different than they were 10 years ago, and we certainly don't expect them to change back. As far as the special education, we have a good team at the high school. I think we do in our county. I think, we have to, there's really, we have to follow the law. That's IDEA. It's federal law, so, it's not really necessarily a plan. It's making sure that everybody knows the law, make sure that everybody that has students with disabilities know what their accommodations are, and that we're following those, and that they understand that there's a reason why these students have the IEPs.
Thank you. My second and final question. Please give some examples of how your planning and goal setting for your school led to improvements. Again, so this could include social emotional learning, it could include special ed, student learning, critical thinking, the well-being of students and staff.
I'm sorry, did not hear that question.
All right, so some examples of how your planning in various areas, your planning and goal setting, led to improvements in your school.
So I think, one of the things that we've done is we, have meetings with our department chairs, and we make sure that we give our department chairs the achievement data, and we emphasize, that, things that we need to be doing better as far as improving test scores, improving student achievement. I think just meeting with our faculty and making sure that they know what the priorities are, what the concerns are, give them some suggestions on how to make those improvements. I think we have also had, concerns about some student behavior. And I think my teachers are very concerned about things that they're starting to see in their classroom. We put a plan together and how we're going to support the teachers. There's just a lot going on with the teachers and try to maintain classroom management and teach.
All right, next we have Kason Orr. Kason is our student school board rep.
Okay, good. So my question would be, what are your plans for continuing and increasing the communication between the school board, staff and faculty, the public, and most importantly to me, I guess, the student body?
Would you repeat that question?
Yes, I'm sorry. What are your plans for continuing and increasing communication between the school board, staff and faculty, the public, and the student body?
Yeah, one of the things I want to make sure we do is I'd like to, invite the school board to come to the school, in all their schools, and visit with the teachers. I think some do that. I would love to have board members come to the high school and sit and spend some time chatting with the teachers, students, have lunch with them in the cafeteria, come to the faculty meeting and just give teachers an opportunity to address, ask questions or express concerns. I don't think the board is opposed to, they don't want to block communication. I certainly would not want to do that, even as a building principal. I think it's very important and very helpful that our teachers communicate with their board members. And so I would, really I would emphasize, those opportunities with our board members.
Mr. Williams?
I have criterion 8, and it says seeks information and ideas relative to the problem, makes decisions that demonstrate fairness, impartial judgment, appropriate analysis, and sensitivity for those affected by the decisions. So my question is, tell us about the most important decision you've made in your last or current position. How did you involve the people who would be affected by that decision?
Okay, so, one of the hardest things that I have to do is tell someone that we're not going to recommend their reemployment. I got into education because, I was drawn to public service. I wanted to help people. Being that person who's having to have those hard conversations with people, that's just not in my nature. And I don't think it's in most educators' natures to have to do that. But I also recognize the fact that sometimes there are people who are working in our schools in positions like educators or administrators that are not effective and they're not doing a good job, and you have to make that change. And I've had to tell some of my friends that people that I was close to, that I respected and that I liked, that it's just not working out, and we have to make a change. I live with that. I know that decision is in the best interest of our students, but it's still hard, and it keeps me up at night. But I do what I need to do to make sure that our schools are successful and that kids can learn, and we have a good climate. I think that's the hardest thing that hardest decisions that I've had to make. Again, you do what you have to do for the welfare of your students in your school.
My second question is from criterion 9. It says, is willing to work effectively with a school board by keeping the board well informed, making clear and sound recommendations, standing firm with your decisions, sharing credit for accomplishments, and enhancing the reputation and effectiveness of the board. My question would be, how would you work with your board to be effective, make good decisions, and be respected as a board by the community?
That's a good question too. I certainly will keep you informed of everything that's going on. One of the things that I've learned is bad news does not get better over time. And things happen. It's a large school district. We have a lot of schools. We have a lot of moving parts. So things are going to come up. Things are going to happen, and we'll deal with those. We'll tackle those on a situation by situation basis. I like to just not only bad information or something bad or that's happening. I want to keep you informed of things that are going on in our county, just as a matter of making you aware. I want you to know different activities that are going on. We have band concert, choir concert, or play going on in schools, give you a sports schedule, just general information I think is really important. I think, oh shoot, I lost my thing. I think just as, communication goes, I'm a good communicator. I won't keep you in the dark. I won't put you in a position where, you find something out that I knew that was really important that you need to know about. I will never do that, I promise you. Again, bad news does not get better over time. I will, I guess, I think it's just important that you understand that, I will be a good and effective communicator.
Ms. Leakey?
Maybe.
How's that?
Much better.
I'll talk in Southern real slow. Criterion 10 has demonstrated the ability to work effectively with diverse student populations and multicultural groups within the school system and in the broader community. That's the broad topic. Question number 1, what evidence can you cite to demonstrate you have the ability to work effectively with diverse student populations and multicultural groups?
Okay. Yeah, we have a diverse population at Franklin County High School. Unfortunately, our teachers, we do not have a very diverse teaching staff at the school, and that's unfortunate. I think our students miss out whenever we don't have the diversity of our teaching staff. And that's something we definitely will have to work on. We have to improve. I think we have to come up with a good recruiting plan so that we can encourage and encourage our a diverse teaching staff, diverse staff in our schools, and in leadership positions as well. I think that's really important. I love my kids. I talk to kids in the halls all the time. I think they're very comfortable with me. I feel like I'm approachable. I think there's some, definitely some things that we can work on in our county as far as, improving the diversity of our teaching staff and people in leadership positions.
Let me expand on that just a little bit. Your resume reflects a rather extensive experience in the military.
Yes.
And certainly a diverse population there. Can
Absolutely.
you cite some of the leadership strategies that you use to unite your soldiers?
That's in the military, it just wasn't a problem, wasn't an issue. You just did not see race. Some of the best leaders I've ever worked for were African American. When I first went into the Air Force, my flight sergeant was an African American gentleman, and he was great. And I learned so much from him. He took me under his wing, and my experience, it was my experience, and others may feel differently about it, but you just did not see that. And I'll tell you, especially in a combat zone, I had 2 non-commissioned officers who worked under me who were both African American. They were awesome. And whenever you work with people in a combat zone, you really bond with them, and you get to be tight with them. But nonetheless, they kept in contact with me after they left. They were both in the Navy, which was a little bit of a rub, but it was still a great experience. I think my experiences in the military, just opened my eyes to, what is out there and why I think the systemic racism is such a sin. It's such unfortunate that people have that attitude because. I even at my last school, predominantly African American kids, they loved me. The people in the black community hated to see me go. I remember telling one of the church leaders that I decided to retire, and it made him mad. He was really upset with me that I was leaving because we had made some really good progress.
The second question under that criterion,
how can diverse community groups be united for a common cause?
Well, I think education is a common cause. Education, it cures a lot of things that ail us, and especially in our poverty situation. Education is the ticket out of poverty. And if we can't rally around our schools and our teachers and our kids, then, I think that would be very unfortunate. Now, I do believe we can. We can do that. We can rally around our schools and education. And it's more than just our sports teams. It's our band, it's our choir, it's our theater arts classes. It's test scores. Do we have a diverse group of kids who are taking our honors classes? Are these kids taking our AP classes? Do we have kids that are in the top 10% academically in our elementary, middle school, and high schools? If not, then there's something wrong, and we need to address that.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Cole?
Dr. Alsop, my questions pertain to your ability to develop and administer a school budget that not only provides quality education for students, but also ensures faculty and staff have the resources that they want and are asking for, but remains fiscally responsible. So, first question, I guess, is what would you do? What steps would you take to make sure that our budgets are spent in a wise manner?
Sure, I think it's very important that we get input from our teachers and our administrators. I think, what I've done at budget time, I've asked my teachers to give me input, a prioritized list of things that they would like to see us purchase. And we would do the same thing. And I want to work with the Board of Education. I want to work with other stakeholders, to make sure that we're, good stewards of the money from our community. We need to look at the budget. We need to make sure there's no fluff in the budget. We have to be responsible for our expenditures. So that's one of the things, definitely would do is have that conversation, find out from the teachers what it is that they need. And we don't need to be cheap, too. We don't need to be putting Chromebooks in these classrooms for teachers. They need good computers, good equipment. That's my opinion. I think the new funding formula, and I guess my question is, are we going to call it TISA or TISA? I've heard it both ways. I'm going to call it TISA. I hope that's not a deal breaker for you. But so let's talk about TISA. I think this is a great opportunity for somebody to come in as the director of schools, because I think the new funding formula is going to be, I think it's going to be good. I'm real impressed with some of the things that I've seen. It gives us opportunities to get money for improvements, and I think the funding is going to be tied to academics. I think that's all good. There's a lot of different things that are going to affect the amount of money we get through the new TISA funding formula. But we have to make sure that our budget priorities line up with our strategic plan. Are we visiting our strategic plan annually? I think the new TISA formula is requiring us to tie our funds to our plan, and I think that's important to do that anyway. The other thing I want to just mention when it comes to budget, I think in my 32 years, we've probably operated during a recession more than during times when we're good. We had plenty of money to spend, and so I've learned how to make those cuts, and I've learned how to make those hard decisions. The last thing we need to do if we're having to make cuts in the budget is we need to try not to do anything that's going to directly affect our students. I think the cuts need to come at the top first, and again, go, depending on how much we're needing to cut and reduce, getting closer to the students, we need to leave that alone. We need to leave programs alone as much as possible. I think it would be unfortunate that we would have to cut a program for a student, and they're missing out just because of when they were born and the time that they went through that particular grade.
All right, my next question, in our district, we're very dependent upon the county commission. So what do you propose doing to gain their buy-in on the budget?
Sure. And I think there's a little, and I'm going to be frank with you, I think there's a little bit of damage. I think we have got to make a strong effort to rebuild a relationship with our county commissioners. They're not the bad guys. They are not anti-school. They are not going to keep us from getting things that we need. I think they recognize that we need to work on our teacher salaries, so we can be competitive. And while I'm talking about teacher salaries, we cannot look at our classified staff as kind of an afterthought. We have got to make sure we're taking care of those folks too, because we can't have school without our support staff. So, but back to the county commissioners, I'm good at team building. I'm good at building relationships. I want to meet with them. I want to hear their concerns. I think they're very smart and wise. I think they want us to make good decisions. I don't think there's, nobody should be a rubber stamp. This board shouldn't be a rubber stamp. The county commissioner should not be a rubber stamp. I think if we have something that we need them to help us out with, we need to make a case and we need to sell it to them. And I think they will do what is in the best interest of our schools and students.
Board members, do you have any other questions that you'd like to ask at this time?
What's your vision for the Franklin County Schools?
My vision is we are going to improve student achievement. That's the priority. I know that there's a lot of talk about the third grade retention law. And I know that has changed, over time. And I think it's a little bit more palatable than what it was when it first came out. That law has been in place since 2011. But it's only recently that they've changed it and taken the decision to retain a student in third grade away from the schools and put it back with our government. That's unfortunate. Last year, if the law had been in place, 60 to 70% of our third graders would have been retained in the state of Tennessee. Wow. I mean, that's unbelievable. That's unbelievable. And to be honest with you, that's on schools. That's on school district leadership. That's on us. So to that I say, challenge accepted. I hear what you're saying, and we are going to do a better job. So there's currently 18 bills in the General Assembly that could directly affect this third grade reading law. So how this will play out is anybody's guess. But if I'm your director of schools, we are going to continue to work very hard to make sure our students are reading at grade level. And we need to be doing that prior to them going into the third grade. Third grade, they're reading to learn, not learning to read. So I'm not a big fan of retaining kids. I know Ms. Schultz has talked about situations at Broadview that were successful. So I know the research on that, and those kids are very likely to drop out from high school when they're retained. But you also cannot continue to socially promote kids. We have to prop these kids up. We have to make sure we're doing things, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, even pre-K, to make sure that we identify struggling students. We put measures in place and supports in place to help those kids before they ever even get to the third grade. We need to look at, an individual learning plan similar to an IEP, but it's not for students that have a disability. And put them on a plan, work with those kids, more concentrated than other students. Also, we need to bring our parents in. We need to give them materials that they need to work with those kids and give them some training. Hire some teachers to bring those parents in the afternoons, the evenings, and teach them things that they need to be doing with those kids. I think this third grade reading law has gotten a lot of parents' attention. I think, the kids are very aware that there's a possibility that this, could mean that they'll be retained. I don't like that high stakes component of it. But if nothing else, if we can get our parents to help us with, making sure kids are prepared to go to the fourth grade, I think that will pay off for us big time. Reading is the most important thing that we need to teach these kids, the most important. I'm a biology guy. I taught biology. And I've said, when I was teaching, I've said many, many times, if you bring me a kid that can read, they can write, and they can do math, I can teach them science. I can do that. And the inability to read holds them back in so many areas. So, reading will be a major priority for me as your director of schools.
Thank you. Anyone else? Dr. Alsop, is there anything else that you would like to share with us?
I do. I'd like to share with you my transition plan if I could.
Thank you.
So I briefly mentioned this earlier in the interview, and I am a planner. I love to plan. I don't like to be caught off guard. This is something that I have talked to other superintendents about, and some things that they did when they first took over a school district as a superintendent or director of schools. I'm not going to read this to you. Please take some time to look over this, and we're going to meet on Friday. If you have some questions about this, I'd love to be able to talk to you. But I think this is really important. This is a great opportunity, for some things that need to be, an opportunity for me, an opportunity, I think, for Franklin County Schools. And I appreciate, you looking at this and giving me some feedback on it.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you being here tonight, and look forward to seeing you on Friday when we'll do some more interviewing. I hope that we will be able to come to some decision by our March board meeting.
Okay.
So that's where we are at this point.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sweet.
Charlene Simmons, she does it.
All right, folks, we're going to get started. Our second candidate tonight is Dr. Carrie Holman. We want to welcome you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for sitting in front of us and listening to questions and responding. We appreciate that. The interview process is rather simple. The criterion that we adopted when we started the search process will be used for questions, and all board members will participate in the questions. Would ask you that, knowing that there's several areas that the board wants to explore, that you be concise with your answers.
Okay.
Okay. With that said, I'm going to start out by asking you just some general questions. First one is, we've read your resume, so we know something about you. Is there anything that you would like to tell us that's not on that resume?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you all so much for taking the time to select me and allow me to sit before you as well as the community. And so, as you have in front of you, you do have my resume. But one of the things, well, several things that are not on the resume that you won't be able to pick up on is one, my energy. You will find, as I hope that as we spend time talking with each other, you will pick up on very quickly the energy level that I have as a professional. That is something that I carry forth each and every day. In addition to that, me being a very positive individual. You will hear me throughout the evening specify and talk about constantly that I do not believe in such things as problems. I look at everything as an opportunity. And that's because I am very positively driven, because I'm completely sold out to education. So I hope that as you preview the resume, I would hope that there are some things that do stand out to you. But in the event that there is something that you have further questions about, I would love to answer those for you.
All right, my second question. What will you do to create an atmosphere in schools that will lead to educational excellence for all students?
Absolutely. First of all, let me go back to the question there. When you think about what would I do to create excellence education for all being the key word. And so with that, the very first thing, one of the things that I've learned as an administrator through my experience, whether it be a classroom teacher or working as a elementary administrator or a middle school administrator, or even working at the university level, I have learned to listen. What happens is, once you learn to listen, you can then gauge the angle and the approach that you need to take as an individual. Because when you're looking at all being all is more than just a word, but it encompasses a great deal. And so I have to give attention to the listening. The second thing, as a leader of a district, as a school, or even as a classroom teacher, you have to model what is expected. And so therefore, leader is just the title. But my role for the district as we work together would be that of an instructional leader. I believe in leadership. I believe in modeling what is exactly expected, such that is no gray area for individuals. Next thing I would do, we have to, as leaders, support. Now, we have children that are coming to our schools every single day. And as I often tell my faculty and staff, we have them for 180 days. That 180 days is significant time to show an impact. And so therefore, how do we do that? Well, I can't just decide that I want to speak to young men. I can't decide that I want to speak to young women. But I have to look holistically at all children, that being their academic well-being, as well as their social well-being and their emotional well-being. Because the realization is, we can most definitely have, and as we would, according to the state, follow the state standards. But then at the end, at the beginning of the day, middle of the day, and the end of the day, children are dealing with a substantial amount of things that we must, as leaders, be ready to tackle and to address. So when I think about creating an atmosphere, what's important is the children, when they get out of the car, when they get off the bus, if they get off their bike, as I often say, if they're a walker or a runner, we've got to make sure that an environment when they walk through the door is one that is conducive to meet them at their every need.
Thank you. My third question, what do you consider to be the major strengths that you would bring to this position? Say maybe 3.
3? Okay, I can do that in 3. The very first thing that I would say a strength of mine would be that of communication. I believe in the power of team, in so much that as a board, as a future director of schools, it is our task to work cohesively together. And in doing that, there has to be a line of communication that is truly transparent and open at all times. Secondly would be relationships. I'm relationship driven. When we think about working with children, working with teachers, working with the principals, as well as the community, there is power in building and establishing relationships, but more so maintaining those relationships. And thirdly, most definitely would be, I would bring to the table my experience. When I think about my 27-year journey and having served as a former student here in Franklin County, as a teacher here in Franklin County, and as a principal here in Franklin County, now serving as a principal in Rutherford County, and also working at MTSU with the adjunct faculty there, and speaking at different conferences across the state or this our great country, I believe that my experience will aid in the support as well as the acceleration of what we as a county currently have.
Thank you. I'm going to move right into the criterion now. Criterion 1 deals with having exceptional listening skills, which you just touched on a few minutes ago.
Yes.
But my question there is, give us an example of when you've changed your mind and taken a different course of action as a result of listening to others.
Absolutely. I would most definitely say that is a great question, in so much because when you have been in education now, the years that I have, sometimes you have this mindset of, I know what works. But you have to be open to voice. And so with that, I can recall a very instant where my teachers, we sat down and they wanted to shift and go into what is called mini schools or academies. And for what mini schools are, so you have 300 children in one grade level. And so within that grade level, there are children that have one ELA teacher, one math teacher, one science, one social studies teacher. And so prior to going into mini schools, or we call them academies, we were whole school. And so the teacher was like, Dr. Holman, can we at least look at it? Can we talk about it? So we set up collaboration sessions after school. Those sessions were set up voluntary for those who were truly interested in wanting to pursue that particular endeavor. And so after they storyboarded all of the ideas for the academy, I had them then to look at the pros and the cons. Not so much that I was against it, but I am a type of leader that I want you to come to me with solutions rather than issues, because we can gain a lot of ground if there are solutions that you have. So after they storyboarded and they began to start looking, I said, now the floor is now yours. I am here as a facilitator. I just want to sit and listen. The power of teacher voice, them being able to challenge each other, sets a precedence in the culture and the climate in a school, because not everything can be determined or should be determined by the school principal, but to have teachers to understand that their voice is greatly appreciated. So that would be most definitely one example. And so based on their storyboarding, and we went through that for several months because we started the prior year, and then therefore once they had the model in place, I empowered them to then say, okay, this is what we feel like we should do. And so therefore they then, as teachers, led the professional development during that summer to get ready for the upcoming school year. And to this date, we are still in academies. You want me to give you another example?
If you'd like.
I would, absolutely. The next one I would...
I think I'm going to get it anyway.
All right, I'm on a roll, but I can stop, I promise. The next one would be that of my principal evaluations. As a leader, each year we as principals are observed throughout the course of the year, and then we meet with our director of schools at the end of the year for our post to talk about what the strengths were, what areas need to be given attention. And so with that, when I look at my principal evaluations, I most definitely take heed to what leadership says to me. That was ingrained in me from my early years of college at University of Tennessee, Chattanooga, where we were taught to be reflective practitioners. And so with that, I take what my leader says to me very serious, because education, I believe, and will take this to my grave, is the most noble profession that there is. And therefore, it has to be at all times serious at the highest level.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Criterion 2 deals with having the wisdom to know when change is necessary and the ability and determination to generate such change. My question is, describe a significant change you initiated in your district or school and tell us what evidence you have to show it was a positive change. How did you build support for that change, even in the face of opposition?
Absolutely. I go back to when I was first named principal in Rutherford County at Central Middle School. Deep inner city school. I had a school that was only 7th and 8th graders. When I walked into the school, I had a school of 1,200 students just with 2 grades. During that time, I was faced with a lot of opposition. One, because I was the school's 4th principal in a 5-year span. And so in getting there, I realized very quickly that when you think about education, the school is just one portion of it. Community partnership is another component. Parent engagement is another component. And then most importantly are the students. They are most important. So I quickly had to think, how do I rally and shift the culture and the climate of said school in a positive light? Because when I got there, it was said, I cannot believe you just walked into this. Why? I said, let me help you understand. Schools are schools. Children are children. And they need good, solid leadership. So what I did when I was there, I started a project called Project Feed. And Project Feed, I am proud to say, ran for 15 years. You ask me, what is Project Feed? Project Feed was our way to build community connection with our community, with our students, and with our parents. So I would challenge you, feel free to look at that. It's been on the news. What we did the week that we get out for Thanksgiving, on that Tuesday, we prepared hot Thanksgiving meals for the entire community. How did we do that at no cost to the school? We did that by having a food drive for the last 2 to 3 weeks in October. Children were then asked to bring in certain canned goods. Me being the person that I am, because a person can only tell me 2 things, yes or no. So I go out to the community and I said, here's what I want to do. And so from that birth Project Feed, it got so big that we were feeding thousands of meals every year. For 15 years, we fed about 15,000 individuals at no cost to the school. This past year was the last year that I did that because I knew that it was time for a shift to do something different. But that process brought about such a community awareness that I not only did it at Central Middle, but I also carried that over to my current school, Laverne Middle. And through the years, the testimony to that, the evidence thereof, is the reward of the return that parents would come back every year, even though their child had matriculated on to the high school and want to help with Project Feed. In addition to that, what really got my heart was one year after my students left, they decided, hey, Dr. Holman, we want to try this at the high school. And so they took on that endeavor as a group of students who had been through our school for 3 years and took on that same project at their high school. It's about, when you talk about a significant impact, community relations, parent engagement, student, teacher, all working together. Board members, everybody was on the serving line. There were just different individuals from the community that partnered with us. And I did that through the partnerships that we had established through the school.
My last criterion speaks and writes effectively to communicate the successes as well as the needs of the school system, is seen as an advocate for children and for public education, can generate public support that will in turn generate adequate funding. My question is, what have you done to help the public understand the needs of your school system?
Absolutely. I go back to what I will continue to speak on throughout, and that is awareness, that is voice, that is listening. Each year at our open house, I make it a point to stand before our families, to share with them where we are as a school. Often, very much so in a very transparent way. In addition to that, because public education is key, and getting parents to own that, I believe in the word ownership rather than buy-in. I want you to own the value that education has. And so we then started what are called content nights. We highlight what is actually being done in school so that our parents can see exactly what's going on. Well, in addition to that, once again, I believe in you got to be creative as a leader to see how do we have all partners working together. Open house is just one way. But then when we have our band concerts and our choir concerts, we empower this notion of if our band students on stage, trust me when I tell you there are parents sitting in the audience who can play instruments. So what did I do? I had and invited our band program to make sure that at our spring concert that we have an implementation of parent musicians to take part in the presentation. Well, you say, okay, well, that's school. Well, what about athletics? You have to be, once again, you take the angle of how do I get people to understand and want to come into school? Because the realization is you have people who have been scarred by their school experience. And so therefore, it is our job then to continue to work in such a way that we remove as many barriers as possible. So at our athletic games, we started doing parent activities at halftime. We would do halftime mathematics at the football game. At the basketball game, we would have our guest parents versus our home parents in a quick little small basketball game or a shootout. Anything that gets them talking about the school helps the culture and the climate, not only of the school, but guess what? Of the district. Because, trust me, we all know the power of social media. And so because of that, we've got to paint the narrative and not let someone else tell our story.
Thank you. Ms. Jones?
Dr. Holman, I must have a microphone, yes you do. The criterion 3 is about fostering support, confidence, and pride within the community for the school system through timely information sharing and providing meaningful opportunities to be solved. My question is, please cite an instance in your current position that demonstrates your ability to build confidence in the schools.
Absolutely. Once again, it goes back to, as a leader in a school, as a school principal, but now having to shift that from a director standpoint. But in my current position, looking at it from, I brought to the attention when our school achieved our reward status. It's one thing for the state to acknowledge that you have received reward status. It's another thing when you take the time to meet with stakeholders and explain what that means. Because words can just be words. And we, each of you, as we're sitting and having this conversation, we know that education has a lot of jargon. But we've got to position ourselves in such a way that we present the material such that the parents understand it. And so I walk them through what that looked like as far as growth, as far as achievement, as far as the importance of behavior, the importance of discipline, the importance of attendance. Because when a parent goes out and chooses to look at a state report card or a school report card, they're looking directly with what has been positioned for them, not knowing fully where each of those numbers are comprised from. So that would be one instance. Another instance in demonstrating the ability to build confidence is children are coming to school each day. Academics is one piece of our complex puzzle. But the social and the emotional well-being of children is equally as important. And so therefore, we increase the number of clubs as well as sports that we offer to our middle school students. To the extent you're ripping and running to every sporting event trying to be visible, whether it's at bowling alley or at the pool or on the field. So, but they're not all children are athletes. So therefore, that's where the power of clubs come in. Well, as a leader, I go back to my opening statement. I believe that we must model. So in order for me to request or ask my teachers and staff to sponsor a club, I, as the leader, chose to sponsor a club. And right to this day, still do, where I sponsor the cooking club at our school. So I teach children after school how to go home and survive off of a quick 25-minute meal.
My second question is, we expect our director of schools to be active and visible in our community. How would you go about accomplishing that in Franklin County?
Absolutely. And I understand the question, but it's one of those, it should be an unwritten expectation that a director should know without being told that he or she must be visible in the community. We represent the face of the district, working directly with the board. That when people are choosing to move in to Franklin County, oftentimes the very first question that's going to be asked of a realtor is that of the school system. How do you do that if you're not visible? You have to be visible. So as a candidate for director of schools, I believe that it's going to be important that we are able to establish town hall meetings where parents are able to hear directly from leadership that's in the district. Because yes, parents are sending their children to school each and every day, but they need to also understand that their voice is extremely important. I would most definitely even embark upon the idea that, because there are not a lot of radio stations, but we are fortunate here in Franklin County to still have one. Why not have an educational spotlight? Why not take the opportunity? Because here's what I believe. There are always more people doing right than there are doing wrong. We can turn on the news, and it is very easy and very quick to see how news is always painted to the bad. But I sit before you. We know this. There are teachers that are working endless every day. There are administrators that are working endless every day. There are children that are coming to our schools every day that want someone to just care. How can we care? As the leader, let me be that face to rally individuals together. To say, listen, it's not about just the schoolhouse, but it's about the community as well. And I would bring to that table many ideas because I believe in first being the example. So as a board, do know that you have a candidate that's sitting before you that you won't have to say, show up. I'll beat you there.
Ms. Schultz?
Dr. Holman, I'm doing criterion 5. It has to do with sound knowledge of instruction, curriculum, and educational programs that best meet the needs of a diverse student body. What steps would you take to ensure academic success for this school system?
Absolutely. Because we know that data is going to forever be. What we must also realize is that the children had a name before a number. So when we look at data, we can't just look at it from a number perspective, but also from faces, also from demographics. It is not a district decision. It's not a school decision. The state has decided that if we're going to measure schools, we have to look at all demographics. We have to look at all children. But then in addition to that, when you start looking at data reports, all is one category. But then you have categories of the black category. You have the Hispanic category. So you have all these different categories that we have to give attention to. We have the EL learners. You have children that have an IEP. So if we're going to look at to ensure academic success for the district, I would be the first to say, as the leader, I need to make sure that I'm communicating directly with the board, that the board understands where we are as a district with our data. Secondly, I would need to take the time to most definitely walk our principals through that process of how to look at data is one thing, analyze data is another thing, but then to execute the data is what's important. Because we can look at it all day long, but I believe that there takes time in teaching, modeling, and training for all stakeholders to understand, because we know that data is there. That's what the state measures us by. But such meetings as this, parents should be given the opportunity not to be rushed, but to take the time to walk all stakeholders through what our data looks like. Because we know that there are many new laws coming down the line. And it has people at this point frantic. Why? Because the information was just shared by the state. It's out there, but we have to put it in parent-friendly language and presentation for them to understand. The next thing that I most definitely have found to be very impactful is that when you're looking at academic success, you have to build leadership teams. And what I've learned as a leader, you have to move away from the environment in which you're in, sometimes with your leadership team, and give them that space to think. So what have I done in my leadership? When it's time to meet with my leadership team, I've contacted local hotels, and I've asked them, could we use your conference room all day? Because if we stay at the school, guess what? The bell is going to ring. Someone's going to come on the radio. A phone call, someone's going to be upset about something. But as a district to move forward, we cannot negate the whole notion of academics and the power thereof.
Describe your experience in developing, implementing, and/or evaluating an instructional program that has improved the educational achievement of students.
Okay. One of the things that we have done as a school, as a leader, is because data is so cumbersome, we looked at purchasing a data housing platform such that all of our teachers, all of my administrators, all of our instructional coaches, all of our interventionists could sit down in a room and we could put up a child's name, Kerry Holman, and we could then track what Kerry has done on his common formative assessments. We could see what Kerry had, how he had performed on his benchmark assessments. We could see how Kerry had performed on his TVAS, how much growth he has made, or what growth he did not make, or the achievement that he made. A data platform would help normalize the playing field so that teachers are not intimidated by what the data says. Here it is. Now that we have it, let's look at the platform to see how we can best prescribe an educational plan for all students. Because here's the realization. Children that have an IEP children that are labeled as special education they have an IEP. Children who are EL learners, English language learners, they have an ILP. If we really stop to think about it, every child should have some type of learning plan. Why? Because we all learn at different modes, at different levels, at different speeds. But the common ground is we all learn. So we have to give attention to that. So we started putting into place teacher data chats. So after a benchmark assessment has been given, my administrative team, which comprises of my administrators and my instructional coaches, we sit down just like we're doing today, and we have the teacher to come in, and we tell them, because teachers want to start off with, well, my data may not look as good. Stop. We teach them to celebrate the small victories, because when you look at it, it's about growth. That here, this is where Carrie is currently, but this is where Carrie needs to get by, say it, 9 weeks or by the end of the school. If we can show a child then how he or she is progressing over a period of time, I have seen the power of a child make significant gains, because now he or she is having to track his or her own data. So then in addition to that, rather than just parent-teacher conferences, we shifted to student-led conferences, where students then decide what standards they want to celebrate, and then they walk their parent through their data.
Ms. Roberts?
I'll be covering Criterion 6, has a track record of building and maintaining a diverse, well-supported staff with high morale. Describe a situation related to your current job that demonstrates your ability to inspire and motivate people.
Thank you, Ms. Roberts, for asking that question. This year, because I'm trying to think about recent, we all know that we are in a crisis with teacher shortage. And all districts are having to be creative on how to approach this angle. I was fortunate this year, students who matriculated through our school, I hired back 5 students this year to serve as educational assistants. 3 of those had degrees but chose not to teach yet. But they wanted to come back to the school. And I asked them, tell me why did you want to come back to Laverne? And as Dr. Holman, when we were here, they could pinpoint moments, specific events that they encountered while they were there. And so to know that children who have matriculated through the building want to come back and be an employee in that same building, I believe speaks a great deal. The second thing is, when I think about how I've inspired and motivated individuals, having served now as an administrator in Rutherford County I've been there now for 19 years. Within my 19 years, 17 individuals who have been under my leadership have matriculated on to become assistant principals, or instructional coaches who were directly in some type of leadership role having come through Laverne Middle.
Thank you. Cite an example of what you have done to build or maintain high morale among staff.
Morale, Ms. Roberts, is my cup of tea. And so, how much time do I know? I'll go quick. I know, Ms. Walker, I'm going to go quick. I promise, I'm going to go quick. So when I think about morale, you once again, fam, we got to think about, if people are going to be in the school for 180 days, kids are there for 180, teachers are there for 200. If we're going to be there for 200 days, let's make the best of it. So what have we done through my years? We have done teacher staff activities called the Amazing Race. I took them downtown Nashville. We met at Music City Center. They say right to this day I cheated, but I did not, Ms. Walker, I did not. But I was the judge, and I gave every team when they got there an envelope. No one knew what team they were going to be on until they got there. They had to draw, and whatever chip they drew, that's the team they were on. Once everybody had their team, I gave them a few minutes to get together. And then I said, now you can have your envelope. We decided to do the Amazing Race just like on television. They had to go downtown Nashville and do all these crazy things. But then after we did that for about an hour and a half, we then as a faculty and staff then met and had dinner. That's just one example. Another example, me being the person that I am, during state tests, what principal do you know who's been bold enough to say, teachers, let's do this, y'all. We're going to have a lock-in. And I had kids, 200, spend the night in the school from 12 midnight to 7 o'clock in the morning. Teachers and staff stayed at no expense. And what we did throughout the night, we had them doing scavenger hunts through the building. I had kids running through the building. I had kids running outside, 1 o'clock at night. I called the police, told them, hey, now we're going to be doing a whole lot of things at Laverne Middle. Just know what's going on. So we do lock-ins. In probably about 4 or 5 years ago, pre-COVID, I took them out to Camp Widgewagon. I probably pronounced that all wrong, forgive me. But it's a camp there in Nashville, and we stayed the entire weekend and did professional development, team building. And of my 89 faculty members, we had 35 or 40 that came. And we spent the night in these cabins. We once again divided into teams. And each team was responsible either for professional development or preparing the meal. Those are the types of things that we've done. For morale, each year, they call me the cook. Told you I sponsor the cooking club. And so each year, one thing that I've learned from my early secretary, she's still employed with this great system today, and I look forward to seeing her. But she said, Mr. Holman, whatever you do, you feed them. I said, yes, ma'am. And so anytime that I can get a chance, I take the time to make sure that my faculty is fed well. I do things where, as a leader, my title is principal. My role is instructional coach. I go into my teacher's classroom and relieve them, and I go teach their lesson and let them go down to what we've established in our building. We have a wellness room that I went to a local furniture store. I had them to donate furniture. So there is a classroom that is complete, calming room, and we started a program called Tap In, Tap Out. A teacher is having a rough day, he or she's not doing well, they can pick up the phone and say, I need to be tapped out. An administrator, an instructional coach, or my counselor will go to the room, teach the lesson, allow the teacher to go have that moment for him or her to pull himself or herself together. So we do that. Then, teacher appreciation, it's all about throughout the year. Yes, it's acknowledged in the month of May, but we do things all year long. So I'll do things like off-campus lunch. I will go teach their class, and rather than teachers getting this wonderful high-dollar 30-minute lunch, I give them an hour and a half off campus to go eat. I do car washes for our faculty. We even did the television show Chopped, where we had, after school, we had a comedian to come in for our faculty. And then, in addition to that, we divided into teams. We had 3 kitchens in the building, and we gave them a basket and told them they have 45 minutes to come up with the best dish. Guess who the judges were? Our student athletes. They then got to judge these dishes that our teachers did. So I could go on and on about morale because it's important. If ever were a time, because where we are in education, yes, I get accountability. Yes, I get data. I can talk about it all day long. But we've also cannot be far gone from people are going through. And if anything, we're trying to keep teachers, nurture teachers, and catapult them to another level of learning.
Ms. Marheski?
I have criterion 7. It reads, shows a commitment to working with students, parents, staff, the community, and the school board in developing long-range goals and strategies for the school system, and the determination and ability to accomplish those goals. Focuses on students' critical thinking, well-being, and learning. The first question that I have for you tonight says, describe your involvement in the development of your school's strategic plan. More specifically, how do you work with students, parents, staff, teachers, community, and the school board to develop and implement your plan in general, as well as for special education and in regards to social emotional learning?
Absolutely. So when we look at the involvement in the development of strategic plans, whether it be for the district or for the school, more so in my current role, it's school. However, we as principals are asked to serve on different committees at the central office as well. So in doing that, we've been asked for principal actionable steps to be given based on what the district's strategic goals are. School-wise, in the development of each year, each school has to do an E-plan. That's the plan, the old term for school improvement plans. And so through school improvement plans, we sit down as a school, not a one person, but an entire team, to look at where are we as a school, what are our goals going to be, what are our action steps, and how can we prove that we're going to get there. And so as the leader, it is most definitely my task to assemble together a team to really evaluate our current school improvement plan, particularly once data has come in, because everything is driven by the data and by the results, and that drives your school improvement plan. Next, in addition to that, because I am fortunate enough to lead a Title I school, we have Title I plans as well. And so each year we are required to do a spring Title I planning meeting. During those meetings, our board members, our community stakeholders, they come in and they work directly with us as a school to see that if the school is being given this set amount of dollars, then how are you as a school allocating these dollars? How did you decide what pot of money was going to go to said line item, and what evidence do you have thereof? And so that's done through our teacher leader teams, as well as coming together holistically as a school to develop and write the plan that is required for the school district.
And can you touch on the special ed and social emotional learning?
And so with that, in your school improvement plan, when we're writing school improvement plans, I'll go back to the very beginning statement of how do we ensure academic success for all? Because the way that I look at, when we look at children, I look at children as children. There are children who need additional support, and so a child that has an IEP, attention has to be given to those children as well, and rightfully so. One, it is accountability to ensure that we are seeing that the children that have an IEP are also getting the same viable curriculum that everyone else is getting. And therefore, if that's the case, how then are we making sure that we are carving out time through the course of the school day to have intervention both at Tier 2 level and also Tier 3 level? Meaning, general instruction is Tier 1. That when they need additional support, that then becomes Tier 2. Those children that need extensive amount then becomes Tier 3. The reason those subgroups are extremely important, as well as the EL learners, is because when you think about it from a holistic standpoint, that child, Carrie Holman, is in the all category. Now, because I have an IEP, I fall in the special ed category. Heaven forbid if I spoke a second language, I would fall in the EL population, and because of my ethnicity, I fall in the black subgroup as well. So now I have one child in the building who then is calculated in all 4 components of the data from the state. So attention has to be given to ensure that when we say all, that all does mean all.
Thanks. And my second question, please give some examples of how your planning and goal setting led to improvements in your school. This could relate to social emotional learning, special education, student learning or critical thinking, the well-being of students and staff, or improvements affecting any other stakeholders.
Yes. So let me start first with social emotional, because I think I didn't hit that like I should have on that last part when I think about social emotional. Because pre-COVID, things were there. COVID happens, it just became more visible. But it's always been there. And so when we look at, once again, data pieces, discipline, behavior, attendance, low performance, we then can track to see what angles are children missing. We as a school recognized that we had to give attention to social emotional learning for our children, SEL. And so this year we started during our homeroom time doing every Monday and Wednesday SEL lessons. Well, where did that come from? Once again, go back to the power of inviting teachers into the table. We recognize it's an opportunity, not a problem. Now, what are we going to do about it? So we started looking at different programs, and they'll be the first to tell you, I'm not quick for a program because a program can't replace a person. But we have to look at the support that the program offers, but yet train the individuals so that they are adequately using the programs that are in place. And so we examined several different SEL models. And so because of budget constraints, what we did, we selected a program and I turned it over to my assistant principal, my instructional coach, and a team of teachers. And they developed weekly SEL lessons for our teachers. We literally hand it to them and say, during homeroom, this week, here's the topic. So we most definitely have looked at SEL. The other piece on planning and goal setting, it goes back to team. As a district, we work together as a team. And so therefore, those leadership meetings have to take place to really, I believe in storyboarding. I believe in writing things down on paper so that everyone can see where we are. That helps everyone on the team see the value of the discussion. And so in doing so, having those meetings off campus has been very beneficial as well. And then probably one of the biggest things, because we as principals, we as the leader of the building, yes, we are tasked to lead the building. So I would hope that we can lead. But it's not just the job of the leader. It's the job of the leader to build capacity in teachers to become leaders. And so therefore, our professional development that we have in our school, teachers now lead those professional developments. Our new teacher induction program is called the Ask Me Squad. Me standing for Mentoring Educator. And I put it together years ago. But after a couple of years, teachers came to me and said, Doc, can we as the teachers revamp how you have written this? I said, walk me through your thought process. They said, rather than trying to give a new teacher everything to survive for 1 year, let us start getting them to survive for the first 30 and 60 days. They rewrote that PD for our new teachers, which we now call Hawk 101. And so they get that training prior to school. That came out of planning, sitting down together, setting a goal to how are we, if we're hiring individuals, how do we prepare them to stay in the profession?
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Holman, we have Kason Orr with us tonight. He is our student rep for the school board, one of them.
So I guess my question is, and as this student rep, it's very important that you emphasize the student body in this question. What are your plans for continuing and increasing communication between the school board, the staff and faculty, yourself, the public, and of course, most importantly to me, the student body?
Absolutely. So you as students have my heart. I would most definitely, without a shadow of a doubt, start what would be called roundtable discussions. Because, and I'm so glad that as a student, you are serving tonight on the board as a representative. Because here's what we know. If we say that we have a district that we want to elevate, that we want to catapult our children at the highest level, then attention has to be given to their areas of strength. And so because of that, not just high school, but I believe, because I've been in middle school for quite some time, middle school children have the ability to clearly articulate their thoughts. And so having student groups would be ideal. I would most definitely look at teacher advisory council. I would look at parent advisory council, and I would also look at student advisory councils. That's an opportunity to bring together stakeholders, teachers, right, parents, and students, because why not hear what their concerns are? But then educate them on what we can and cannot do. Just because a person feels like they want something doesn't mean that we can do it. But I can walk you through and show you evidence piece by piece, in addition to pull and show you law that shows you what we are restricted to. I believe that once stakeholders have that understanding, that you'll have a greater ownership of the value of education. Yes.
Mr. Williams.
I have criterion 8. It says seeks information and ideas relative to the problem, makes decisions that demonstrate fairness, impartial judgment, appropriate analysis, and sensitivity for those affected by decisions. So my question is, tell us about the most important decision you've made in your last or current position. How did you involve the people who would be affected by that decision?
Absolutely. Each day, children are coming to school. Their parents are sending them to school to get a high quality education. As a leader, I am tasked to ensure that there are teachers in the building who, one, are committed to the call to be an educator. And so the truth is, not everyone is as committed. And so therefore, when you have individuals who have chosen not to be committed, then the leader then does have to take a very hard, tough conversation. But if it's ignored, then it becomes a danger to the children. If parents are going to send their children to school every day, then as a leader, I need to ensure that what is being done in school on a daily basis is going to be directed and given attention. So because of that, I have had situations where I've had to call in teachers. But I call in teachers once my administrators have done their step-by-step, once my instructional coaches have done their step-by-step, then I can then call in a teacher and have an honest conversation. And I start the conversation by saying, share with me, share with us, the team, what we have done so far to support you. Because here's what I've got to lay down every night, knowing that children that come into the school or the school district is going to be led by quality educators. And if that person is not committed, I have no problem having a person seek other endeavors. Not at all. Because we have got to be when I say I'm an educational diehard, public education has worked for me. I matriculated through this district, and I can begin to name teacher after teacher that empowered me along the way. Those teachers did not allow us to do whatever we wanted to do. They cared. But times have brought about a change, and teaching is not a job, it's a career. And if a person does not want to embrace that as a career, then they must find another endeavor that is most suitable for what they would like to do.
I also have criterion 9. It says, is willing to work effectively with a school board by by keeping the board well informed, making clear and sound recommendations, standing firm with his or her decisions, sharing credit for accomplishments, and enhancing the reputation and effectiveness of the board. My question is, how would you work with your board to be effective, make good decisions, and be respected as a board by the community?
Absolutely. Here's what I recognize. That is not a one-man show. That is a partnership. It's we, not I. I understand the role of leadership. Always have and always will. I understand accountability. I understand that there are decisions that have to be made. But when a decision has to be made, I do believe that it's most appropriate to let's sit down together, collaborate. Let me hear from each of you. Because as I learn your why, then I can establish our direction. Because as we work together as a unit, we can continue to move Franklin County to another level. And so how would we do that? We got to be transparent. We got to be open to each other. We've got to be very sincere in what we say that we want done. If it's change that we want, then okay, that's a vague. But let's talk about how we get change. What steps do we take? Is that doable? Is it measurable? Who's going to be held accountable? So I go back to the who, what, when, where, how questions when speaking to and working directly with a team. Because it's not the board against the director. It's we are Franklin County. And therefore we stand united. So it's as as one of the leaders, because I'm not the only leader. Yes, I'm tasked with that job, but an effective leader is going to make sure that he or she spends time building other leaders to help carry forth the vision. If the vision of the district of Franklin County is to provide students the opportunity to achieve their potential in an environment conducive to optimal learning, then I need to sit down with the board and say, okay, help me understand where we currently are. What is it that you see in me? How can I be a part of the puzzle? Because when we work together, teachers are going to benefit. Children are going to benefit. The leaders are going to benefit, as will the parents. And as a result of that, if we as a district are working together, what's going to happen? The return, our students will want to stay in their hometown. Our students will then want to work in the businesses of owners that are here. We've got to learn to help children understand they too can be the next entrepreneur who is on the square. They too can be the next banker. They too can be the next doctor in the town. They don't have to leave, but it takes us working together to paint such a picture to our stakeholders and to our children, to our parents, to understand, listen, we're not against you. We're working together. All I ask is that you listen to the position. Let me show you law, because there are some things that we just cannot do. And that's going to frustrate people, but that's okay.
Ms. Leakey?
Good evening.
Good evening.
I have criterion 10, and it has demonstrated the ability to work effectively with diverse student populations and multicultural groups with the school system and with the broader community. Question number 1, what evidence can you cite to demonstrate you have the ability to work effectively with diverse student populations and multicultural groups?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I'll start with my teaching career. I taught first grade in inner city Chattanooga. I graduated from University of Tennessee Chattanooga in December. I actually was hired as the teacher prior to graduation, but could not start until. Well, you say, why are you telling me that? I was my children's 4th teacher before Christmas. Inner city, no EA, no educational assistant. A K-2 school where I thought going through my educational experience I was going to end up in 4th grade, 5th grade. But at the time, UT Chat decided to put all the men in 1st grade. So we were all hired as 1st grade teachers. So I taught in the building as a 1st grade teacher, K-2 school, and I was the only man in the building. Moving on, I was fortunate then to come home here in Franklin County and serve as a teacher at the school, the elementary school that I attended, Deckard Elementary. And Deckard, during that time, very diverse school. I served as a teacher there. Then from there, I was afforded the opportunity to serve as the at-risk coordinator for the middle schools. And I then was able to go between North and South as the at-risk coordinator, working with children who had difficulties but yet needed just some more guidance. From there, became assistant principal here at North. From there, became principal at Clark Memorial. Clark Memorial, once again, very diverse school. Leaving Clark Memorial and then moving to Rutherford County, I then had the privilege to go to the opposite end of the spectrum. Let me revert back, excuse me, because I totally forgot. When I first came home, back to Franklin County, and I taught at Deckard, I was the person that did all these jobs. I taught school, did homebound, did ESP, and then I was able to work with the ESP program. I started I helped the ESP program at Swanee. Did that. So then when I left Franklin County, I went to Rutherford County, and I left here as an elementary principal, but went to Rutherford County and started back in the classroom and was afforded the opportunity to teach at campus school over at MTSU, right? And so different end of the spectrum. So I've had the opportunity to work with diverse populations there. But then I became principal, I was assistant principal at Siegel Middle School. Very affluent school on the opposite side of town. But then leaving Siegel, I became principal at Central. Central, I was their 4th principal in a 5-year span. I had 1,200 students with grades 7 and 8 only. In that, we in Rutherford County, there are a lot of community schools. So my children got out of school and then walked over to their neighborhood. On Front Street, there were homes, $700,000 that my children did not live in. But 4 streets over was the housing projects or starter homes that where my children lived. And so I had the experience in that population to have a melting pot of students from the very affluent to the very impoverished. Regardless of their economic background, the common ground was they're all students. And I didn't treat them any different. I was then afforded the opportunity to then go to the school that I'm currently, Laverne Middle, where I have served for the last 12 years. And there, I have had up to 1,200 students in that building as well. My population there, 40% of my students are African American. 25 to 30% of my children are Caucasian. But then I have a 35% Hispanic population. When I started at that school 12 years ago, I had 1 ESL teacher, English second language. Next year, the school will have 7 ESL teachers in the school. My ESL population is right at about 13%, and my special education population is at 15%. I am proud to say that in doing that, I have a faculty of 89 teachers. Of those 89, I'm fortunate to have almost 32 male teachers on my faculty and staff who are certified. In addition to that, because my population has a diverse population, I'm very intentional to ensure that the children that are in the school have teachers that look like them, that can relate to them. So I have Hispanic, I have Filipino, I have Asian, I have Arabic, I have black, I have white. We have teachers who in the building then are able to work with our children and to hear and be given the opportunity to learn from the kids, because the truth is I have to rely, because I now have 15 to 16 different languages spoken in my building. So I have to capitalize on my student leaders, because we don't have translators for every language. But we've established a culture in such a way that children will say, Dr. Holman, I'll translate.
My second question, how can diverse community groups be united for a common cause?
When you think about working with people, okay, diversity goes beyond color. We look at diversity in the aspect of financial. We look at diversity in the aspect of academic background. We look at diversity in the aspect of there's a shift in the number of grandparents who are now raising children, grandchildren. There's a large population of children who are in foster care. Well, when you have all these different representations in the building, what do you do? How do you do it? I'll tell you. Number one, you speak with as opposed to speaking at. And once we speak with, we get to know the backgrounds of said stakeholders. And by doing that, we're then able to unite together, that they see it as a common goal. The second thing is, as I said earlier, you have to listen. I have to be quiet. I know I've said a whole lot tonight, but I know when to be quiet and listen. I want to hear what people have to say, because when you have something to say, that gives me the opportunity to then learn from you. As a leader, I started this past year doing flipped interviews. And what I do now, before I interview any applicant, I allow them to interview me first. I want them to ask me any question that they have, because here's what I've learned. In doing that, they're answering the questions that I have. That tells me the research that they've done. And so in building that for a common cause, that the message has to be clear from the top, from the head. As a director of schools, I've got to set a tone in such a way that our principals, that our teachers, that our parents, that our students, and our board, that we're in this together. That yes, in any good family, because we're family, in any good family, you're going to always have one or two. But guess what? It's okay, because I've learned never to wear emotions.
Mr. Cole?
Dr. Holman, my criteria, it pertains to your ability to, it's number 11, it pertains to your ability to develop and implement a budget for Franklin County School System that provides a quality education for the students, but also provides resources for your faculty and staff, and remaining fiscally responsible. So the first question is just walk me through the steps that you're going to do, that you're going to go through to ensure that we're spending the money responsibly.
Absolutely. So the very first thing that I would do, I told my wife that when I was preparing for the interview, I said, honey, I feel like I'm doing my dissertation all over again. And so I started my research. And the very first thing that I did, one of the things, I pulled the actual budget for the school district. And I began to look at it. So the very first thing I have to do is analyze this budget. The second thing I would need to do is meet with the finance department, because I know the structure here is differently than what I'm accustomed to. So I need to know how the operations of that works. Now, when I look at budgets, I go back to basic math. It's adding and subtracting. But it's also looking at, okay, if we're saying that we're spending this amount of money on this line item, I just need to get some answers as to why. Is it the best area to utilize those funds? Because if not, then we need to shift. Because we know, as a board, we understand that monies trickle down from local, state, and federal, right? And so because of that, we've got to look at how are we best allocating the dollars that we do have. Because we know that when we look at our budget, we've got to go line by line. And so when I started looking through, I'm like, okay, all right, so instructional, this is what they've done. All right, on salaries, this is what they've done. Well, what happens is that then has to become a table conversation for people to understand this is why we make the decisions that we make. This is why we buy the textbooks that we're going to buy. This is why we can't get this particular program, because when we look at our line items on our budget, here's what's allocated. Now let's see how we're going to best do that. And so the job then would be, let's look together as a team to say, when you all see it, what do you see? When I see it, this is what I look, because when you have different sets of eyes to look at something, we're all going to see something different. But that's okay. Now we have to decide, now what's best for children? Is personnel best or are programs best? Do we need to shift and make some adjustments in how we do our organizational structures? So those are the types of things that I would most definitely do first.
Our district is fiscally dependent upon working with our county commissions.
Yes.
What are you going to do to make sure that you can propose a budget that they're going to be supportive of?
Absolutely. So even with that, you will find in the packet that I provided for you, I submitted to you a 30, 60, 90-day plan. In the 30-day plan, one of the very things that I said is to most definitely take the time to meet with the county commission. Because, once again, they are stakeholders in our educational arena. They are decision makers. But at what point has there been the opportunity to say, can I share with you these types? Here's the things that we are considering. Let me walk you through how expensive these things are. We know that teachers have been underpaid and will that's the way it has been. But to bring to the forefront, can we look at how do we gain support of our teachers? Have we taken the time to really look at how we can allocate monies? Let's walk them through that process. Because yes, they are a governing body, and education, as I said at the very beginning, we are inundated with jargon. But a moment to sit at a table with every county commission, I would love to be given that opportunity, along with the board, because we together, united, can show and speak to what we desire for our children. Absolutely.
So what's your vision for the Franklin County Schools?
Absolutely. When I think about the vision, I first want to make sure that if we're going to say, as a district, that we're going to provide students the opportunity to achieve, my vision then is to ensure that every child understands what achieve means. What does that look like? What does it sound like? And so my vision is to empower. My vision is to encourage. My vision is to accelerate where we currently are.
Any other board members? Dr. Holman, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yes. As we come to a close, I know that you've got to make a decision. And I know it's not an easy one. You're going to get individuals who are going to sit here and we're going to present to you. We're going to have packets that we're going to give you. But I ask of you to think, what is the why? What do we desire? And how do we get there? I am committed. Public education has worked for me. I sit here today as a single-parented child, mother worked, community raised, community nurtured. But I go back to my first grade, my Miss Moore, my second grade, Miss Bennett, my third grade, Miss May, my fourth grade, Miss Simmons, my fifth grade, Mr. Jones, my sixth grade, Mr. Payne. To the point that I got to the middle school, I was able to do my dissertation. Why? Because I took typing. And I was afforded that opportunity to advance from a manual to an electric typewriter. Never having the letters on the typewriter key. I still remember that from my middle school days, Miss Walker. When I think about the Miss Richardsons, when I think about the Arching Larrys, when I think about the Mr. George, when I think about Delphina Jones, when I think about Carl Smith and Miss Collins at the high school, Mr. Isabel, and I think about the teachers that I've had the opportunity to work with, to be taught by, Franklin County worked for me. And since it worked for me, why would I not want to come and work for Franklin County? I appreciate my education that I got. Single parent at home, male, black, and I have my associate's degree from Montlow State Community College. My undergraduate from UT Chattanooga. My master's from TSU. My EDS from MTSU. And my doctorate from American College of Education. You're looking at an individual who is committed. And I have the energy that I had from day one. There is nothing that I would have the employees in this district to do that I would not do. Just because I have been principal doesn't mean that I have negated the fact that I need to go serve in the cafeteria line. That I'll mop a floor in a heartbeat. That I will teach a class. I believe in it. I'm not just talking a good talk. I challenge you. Read the references there. Make phone calls. Is everyone going to speak on my behalf? No, and they shouldn't. Because you will never please everybody. But here's one thing I do know. I go home every night and I sleep peacefully. Why? Because the work that I do, I'm committed. And my work speaks for itself. Thank you.
Thank you again for being with us tonight. We look forward to seeing you on Friday for further interviews. And hopefully we're going to be able to culminate this process by our board meeting in March. So we look forward to seeing you Friday. Thank you.